whole new being would erupt from it, and there'd be two of them squirming, coming towards you, leaving a...
You motherfucker.
Okay. I wasn't sure. You got me. I wasn't entirely sure. Oh, hello.
No. Oh no.
What?
Anyway, chat, how are you tonight? Freeman and I have witnessed something horrible.
Hi, everybody. I don't know why this has decided that it's only going to work sometimes now, and it's going to I have to manually change the audio every time. Anyway, as I was saying, I'm not going to give any context to what Freeman was saying because the context is horrifying. Also, it's funnier. But anyway, suffice it to say, I showed Freeman and John a horrifying GIF that I saw earlier today, and they're just reacting to it. It's fine. Anyway, maybe I'll post it somewhere else later. Some of you know what I'm talking about already. But, yeah.
I've retreated deep into my hoodie in
It's not great. It's not great. Anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about personal growth as ttrpgers. I'm sorry. It's just,
Yeah.
can't get it out of my head now. We're going to be talking about personal growth as ttrpgers. But before we do that, we got some announcements. First of all, the latest episode of Infinite Horizon just went up on YouTube today. And if you are a podcast listener, you can check it out on podcast on Sunday around noonish. It should be up. So yeah, so you can go check that out then and there. I just realized my camera's like a lot further over than it normally is, and I don't know why that is. Anyway, so now I'm like looking off this way. So, yeah. What was I saying? Infinite Horizon. Yeah, that you can check that out today. The latest episode is up on YouTube. And we'll be back for the next episode of Infinite Horizon on Wednesday. It'll be great. I'm really looking forward to it. Nice blue lighting that you're only now noticing. It's only been there for most of October.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
I still remember the day that your lights came and you just sat with them like wrapped around your shoulders.
Yeah, yeah, my lights came and I'm just like hanging out in a call and I just have it just sort of wrapped around my body and But yeah,
becoming the cyberpunk glow bug you were meant to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my God, Olivia has joined us on her old Twitch account.
Oh, cool.
Olivia has joined the chat.
Who is this Dem Books though? Like, who is that? I don't know her.
I've never met her. Certainly don't, write tabletop RPGs for her to play or anything like that.
No, not at all. I worked at a store for a year before noticing the exit sign. Man, you must have been trapped in there for a long time. Anyway, so I think that's all we have for announcements. I think that's everything. All the big stuff. We have an announcement for an announcement, which is that on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, we will have something to announce to all of you. But at the moment, we only have this announcement for that announcement. So that's it. That's the whole announcement. Yeah. So let's start off the way we haven't in a while, unfortunately, which by saying hello, Geek Outs, welcome, Age of Fit, welcome, Karaoke Night 69, Gemini Lightning. I saw Dem Books though. I don't know who that is, but they're here.
Yeah, welcome. They've got a scroll.
Welcome, everybody. And those of you lurking, we love you too. Welcome. It's good to have you.
Those of you on VOD Squad, we love you too.
I mean, yeah.
Goes without saying, but we do anyway.
Yeah. Mystery poet. I love that. Yes, the mystery poet has entered the chat.
Ooh.
Now I'm picturing like a Lone Ranger type, but instead of like pistols, it's quills, like feather quills.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You just got like instead of all of like the bandoliers of ammunition, it's just bandoliers of like
Oh yeah, like
bottles of ink.
ink bottles. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Ooh.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like you got some like ink like scrubbers on there
Oh,
to
hey,
finish off.
Olivia's joined us. Well,
Oh,
welcome, Olivia, for the first time this evening. You're talking shit only a little bit. I mean, like, no. You'll know when I'm talking shit about you when I start bringing up your shitty opinions about Lost, about the show Lost. That's when you know I'm talking shit.
Oh, I'm gonna jump in there too.
Yeah.
I'll jump in there a little bit.
Namely about how you think it's good in any way, but I'll save that for when you're here to roast me back. So, hi, Spigs, welcome. We're hanging.
Hey.
We're struggling to get started. Not really. We're just
No.
doing our usual
we're just
thing.
banter and
we're just vamping.
You know, just doing
that's
this
the word.
as
yeah.
we do.
As we do. Oh, hey, I don't know if you're here or on VOD Squad or gonna see this at all, but I will say that geeky artist followed a day ago, and that is our 400th follower on Twitch.
Ooh.
So we now are at 400 followers on Twitch. So yeah,
A nice even 4 centuries.
a nice even 4 centuries.
I like it.
Just, which is coincidentally the amount of time this one single year has taken to pass. So, you know,
Last week was a full half of it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It was, Olivia says, "I will fight you another day." Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's on. Yeah. So, all right. Well, with that, I suppose we could get started on whatever we're here to do, like a stream or something about dice. I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah, I think I dimly recall that we were talking about like growing, gardening. That's
Gardening.
What it was.
Yep. This is a gardening stream.
Growing personal
Right,
personal greenhouse.
Exactly. Yeah, it's about planting and growing your own personal garden on dice. I don't know. I couldn't think of a better tie-in.
This would have been a perfect opportunity to have our favorite like TTRPG player in Plant Cryptid on stream, Caitlin Bruder.
That's true. But we have Freeman, who plays a botanist on Infinite Horizon. An amateur botanist.
Oh, that's true. I did touch on that a little bit.
It's time for Luca's backstory. Rule of Plants. Yes, that's yeah. For Earth Day, we'll change our name to Rule of Plants. And
I feel like there'll be some issues.
and just like have a stream that's like hosted entirely by household plants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just all of our webcams are focused on like a nice little plant.
Just
and
bring out our succulents and just they'll host the stream.
That's some very like 2020 performance art.
It's very high
stuff.
concept. Like it's some high concept performance art.
Oh my goodness.
No, but for real, we are here
to talk about or to discuss personal growth in TTRPGs.
Thank you, Freeman.
Or in real life too, and how they connect to.
They definitely are connected. So
definitely.
You know, I hope Twitter is nicer to you than IHOP when they went IHOB. Yeah.
Oh man. Huh.
Yep.
Huh.
Okay, let's talk about the actual topic at hand. So, instead of throwing somebody under the bus like I normally do, John, what do you got for us?
Motherfucker.
Oh.
You lure. I do every week. I am shocked at your betrayal, and I should learn. But anyway,
John is just always surprised Pikachu face.
Really, truly. I figured like it was actually such a good lead in this week because you're like, yes, the Lucas backstory this week. John, what do you got?
I mean, mine's better if we have context for it first. So like
that's true. All right, so welcome, ladies and germs in the chat. We're gonna be. I don't know where that got away
Welcome
from.
all of you fine organisms.
Oh
Welcome to
no.
all of our viewers, multicellular and
I'm
otherwise.
sorry. Before you continue, I just want to point out what Age of Fit said, which is this is truly IHOB, Infinite House of Bina. Correct.
The infinite horizon is just populated with pancakes and glowing bugs.
Yeah.
Anyway, recovering from the bit that we are currently engaged in, we are here tonight to just talk a little bit about how we change as people and how that affects how we engage with our favorite kind of hobby, tabletop RPGs, are those collaborative role-playing activities in which we all engage, or at least many of us do. I'm not here to judge, but if you're here, probably. But anyway, I think that like I remember we were talking about the topic on Sunday this week, and it was a cool idea because I know that I am definitely a very different TTRPG player right now than I was when I first started playing them back in college, which is to say I played very competent, powerful TTRPG players back in that were just essentially like a power fantasy for myself, and now I just play idiots.
Yep. That's the way it is. Legitimately, that is the trajectory. I feel like you start out by playing the power fantasy, like the very competent, it's you but better at absolutely everything, and then eventually you're just like, it's you but like way worse than you normally are. Like, but so much worse. Like,
It's
either
you.
just a terrible person and like, or it's you but like chaotic and yeah.
Really, I think part of it is that it's me, but when RPG me fucks up, they have superpowers to compensate for it, whereas I just all of a sudden have to decide what I'm going to make for dinner now that I have mayonnaise and 2 eggs in the fridge, and that's it.
You could make more mayo.
I could
Just
combine.
double down.
So I think this is interesting. Karaoke Night says, I'm still a fresh babe and I try not to be me, but being someone else is hard. And honestly, I don't know that you ever manage it. Because like even when you watch some of the best, so to speak, right? Like professional actors doing like role playing, there's no way that it's like you can't ever separate yourself fully from the character that you're playing, right? And I'm not even talking in terms of concept. I mean just in terms of like emotionally separating yourself from the character, or like even just sometimes, like more often than not, even if you try really hard to play somebody else, you'll still end up playing you because guess what, you have more practice doing that, so it's hard not to.
You always have to find a little things about the character that you can relate to make it a little easier to make a little relationship between the character and yourself, for sure.
There's a certain amount of Lou that you cannot remove from Kingston, from the Unsleeping City, and like Dimension 20's Unsleeping City, or Fabian Seacaster. Like they're both played by the same person. They're very different characters, but there's a certain amount of even though that Lou's a professional actor who does that thing, or like myself, like playing my own characters. I can be like, you know what, this time I'm going to play somebody who is just terribly socially awkward, and they still wind up being somehow kind of charming. And I'm like, damn it.
Yeah. Age of Fit says, my first character had single-digit wisdom and intelligence. I just played him unhinged and bonkers. What does this say about me? I mean, frankly, I'm not sure there's another way to play that character, so I think you're doing good. Like, I don't know that there is another way of doing that.
Yeah, I feel like completely unhinged was the right choice in that instance.
Spig says, I started playing for others, aka made characters that were mechanically capable for the betterment of the group. Now I just play what I feel is fun and interesting in the narrative. Yeah, that's an interesting trajectory, because like I feel like that's kind of the opposite of how people generally approach TTRPGs, right? Like at least with me, I don't know, mine's kind of a weird trajectory, because I didn't start out as like being a player. I started out more being a GM, so I don't know. It's kind of weird, but for me, when it comes to my players, being a player, it started out for me as being like, I'm playing for myself to like so that I can have I build my character around spotlight moments that I know I'm going to have / want. And now I'm like, no, I'm going to build my character to see what I can best do for the group. And yeah, I don't know. So I think it's interesting.
Yeah, there's been a lot. I know Sam Delev spent some time talking about this on stream a while back, and there's been a couple of other people who have made videos and things about it recently. But just like something that I know that I do now much more as a role, like as a player at the table, is I work to make room for other people, and I try and make characters. And not, I mean, oftentimes it winds up that I play support classes or support characters that, you know, mechanically make other people better. But I also just like as a player role playing at the table, I try and I make a much more conscious effort to involve other people in my character's actions in positive ways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. And I think that's that's one of those things that I don't know that a lot of people start out in that place, and that's only because not because they're like, you know, neglectful or anything like that of the people at the table, but like especially if you're new to TTRPGs, I feel like everything else is so overwhelming it can be hard to keep everything like track of everything, including and especially like who at the table has been speaking the most and who, you know, hasn't had a chance and how to bring them in, right? Like that's I think that's a skill like any other, is like learning how you have to learn how to do it, but it starts off if you're new, everything is being overwhelming, and so you focus more on like, you know, things like what does my character do? How does the game work? When am I supposed to roll dice and like that kind of thing, you know?
Yep.
So it can be harder to pay attention to those things.
And especially if you start off with a very like mechanically crunchy system, like Dungeons and Dragons is a good example.
Or Pathfinder.
Or Pathfinder, heaven forbid. Oh God,
Or
my
if you were
heart
just
goes-
like if you hate yourself, GURPS. I'm
My
sorry,
heart
I
goes
can
out.
never miss an opportunity to take
No.
pot shots at GURPS.
Yeah.
My heart goes out to all of you who, like me, started playing Dungeons and Dragons with 3.5.
Well, yeah.
Those are Spigs and I are on the same wavelength here.
Try GURPS. No, thank you. Actually,
Yeah, I'll pass. I tried. I once made the insane decision to try to teach myself GURPS. Yeah, not great. Anyway, yeah.
But yeah, Gemini Lightning says the crunchy aspect actually helped me. I love math. And I suppose like to a certain extent, and it all depends on the kind of the type of player and the way that you best engage with things. Because if crunchier games give you like kind of a structure to engage with what's going on at the table, or like that's if that sort of stuff is very familiar to you, then I suppose that's something that's like sort of off your mental load, which, you know, means that you're freer to look at or engage with other parts of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I can't say I like math, but there is something satisfying about playing a barbarian and critting on your attack. Ooh. And you like decided that you wanted to use Great Weapon Master and do it recklessly, so you get that bonus 10 at the end of everything. There is something kind of a little cathartic about that.
Sure, sex is great, but have you ever crit as a barbarian with exactly. Great Weapon Master?
With Great Weapon Master while raging. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure why Geek Outs is eating an entire clove of garlic, but now I have to stay away from him, I guess.
Yeah.
It's very medicinal. It has medicinal properties. I could not talk. Has medicinal properties.
So I have a question. So since I'm just gonna take us directly into the deep end of this. So
okay.
What is as a player of TTRPGs, what is a toxic trait that you know you once had that you have overcome?
Oh, I know.
Or maybe you haven't overcome it yet. That's also a possibility.
It's true.
Question for chat as well. Like feel free to answer that question as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Weigh in on this one. I'm just thinking back to the first couple of characters that I played, and I know for a fact uh, that a tendency that I had early on as a player was definitely, um, definitely that player that's just like, oh, but yes, this new aspect of my backstory, which I have invented in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I
So,
was,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to ask for clarifying, but I feel like you were about to do that. So go ahead.
I definitely like I definitely I wanted to be super like I wanted to be the coolest dude, like the coolest character at the table. And I definitely channeled that in a variety of ways, but that was one of them that I know that I did.
Mm,
So and I don't think early on, as few people are, I don't think early on I was particularly good at, as I have described earlier, making room for other players. I think I think that was probably my toxic trait early on. I wanted to do cool flashy shit, but like
Hmm.
unfortunately I would get into kind of an arms race of of people doing cool shit at the table.
yeah.
I've I've transitioned that into just do the most objectively stupid thing that my character can think of to do in
Hmm.
any moment, as long as it doesn't make the game less fun for anyone else. And then I
Yeah.
just do that instead.
Yeah. Spigs, I think this is a good one. This is a good one. It says easy, trying to play other people's characters for them. Yeah. I feel like that's a pretty common one. Like that's a pretty common like thing that people sort of overcome when they like in their trajectory and learning the scope of TTRPGs, right? Is like especially if you're like if you're um like if you've gotten to a level of understanding of the game, right? But still are relatively new. Like that's definitely like a common time to like have that. But yeah, like um also I was laughing earlier at karaoke night saying I took my headphones off to feed my cat a Cheeto. What was the question? That's I understand. That's very important. The question was what's a toxic trait that you know that you had as a TTRPG player that you either have overcome or have become aware of and are trying to overcome. Um,
And I'm sure I have one or two. I can't think of them.
Sorry, Geek Arts is just viciously attacking me for a moment that happened, I think, in the second session of our Cypher game that started at the very beginning of this century, by which I mean 2020.
mm-hmm.
Huh.
Which is just me. You need to make a speed check to slow down. Me, John. I accelerate.
Yeah. Gemini says, I used to think that if something wasn't logical, it wasn't worth doing. Um, but then fun ambushed me.
Huh.
Good. Yes. Um, Age of Fit says, I've played one game and I've specifically tried to avoid the path laid out by the DM at every turn. I could see that. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, let's see. Uh, so I know that mine is being having been a comes from having been a GM first primarily, and it comes from having backseat GMing like thing happen whenever I was in anybody else's game. Not that like I would never act on it like telling anybody how to run their game, but I'd find myself like seething, being like, "That's not how I would do that. That's not how I would do that." And then like it would sometimes come out in like sort of petulant, rebellious ways, and in the choices that I made in my game. Also, going along with what Age of Fit says, and this is I think is sort of dovetails with that one that I just said, which is if I could tell that the GM was trying to push everybody in a certain direction without like giving ample motivation,
Mm.
then or consideration to or in my estimation ample consideration to what we might want to do, but was instead just trying to like push us and like railroad us in a direction, I would do my best to derail it just based on what I knew my character would want to do, which basically ended up turning many sessions into just pissing matches between me and the and the GM. um, where passive aggressive backseat GMing. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way of putting it. And then I got to a point where like I'd played enough, I was a player enough that I like specifically set out like and it was not a thing that I wasn't aware of. Like I knew I was doing it, and the way that I basically overcame it was essentially by playing in a campaign with a friend who was GMing, who was relatively new at it, and just going, okay, I am going to intentionally try to learn to be a better player. So yeah, I think some of it might just be like abandoning what you specifically want out of the game,
Hmm.
and or not abandoning it, but like not seeing what you want, because different people play the game and get different things out of different games.
Mhm.
um and I think it's a matter of allowing room for things outside of specifically what you want to get out of the game. So I think that's, yeah, that for me, that it was more about that.
And I think, like, even to jump off of that, eventually finding creative ways to both get what you want and also make sure that everybody else is having fun too. Because,
Hmm.
like, because D&D or like tabletop RPGs, I'm using that as a surrogate for tabletop RPGs as a whole here. Because tabletop RPGs are a collaborative activity, like the collective enjoyment sort of has to come before any one person's individual enjoyment of like
Right.
the game, which is really just me saying don't be a wangrod,
Hmm.
in to use some Matt Colville terminology.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We've all been a wangrod before.
We all have been. That's the thing. Like, and I feel like that's such a key part of the growth thing, right? Is recognizing that like you and everybody else has been at some point or will be at some point, and that it's not okay, but it's normal. And as long as you are like, as long as you try to be, to be better and improve on those things, then like it's not a character flaw. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and because I feel like so often, at least with me, I feel like so often like a tendency is like when you notice those things, or if they're, or worse, if they're pointed out to you, to get like fucking defensive about it and dig your heels
Yeah.
in. But when you recognize that like everybody's done it, everybody's going to do it at some point, then it kind of, it gives not permission but room, room for growth, I guess.
Yeah, like acknowledgement of and this is just sort of a broad statement, but acknowledgement of fault on your own part, or like acknowledging your mistakes and like owning that, is a huge is super key to growing just as a person, let
Yeah.
alone like as a role player. And it just I think these two things sit so well together, because like role playing is a very, I don't know, I mean, you're just kind of re-examining your own experiences through the lens of somebody that's not quite you. So, like,
Yeah. Also, solid damage run. Welcome, welcome. Um, life is here. It's good.
we out
We're
here.
we out here. All right. Let's see. What is? Oh, this is good. Good follow up with Gemini Lightning, which is it's such a different view. Winning at D&D isn't winning every combat. It's telling a story together while having fun. Yeah, absolutely. Karaoke Net says they have two. I can't be new forever, and I need to get a hang of the mechanics. It just seems like there's a lot to learn, but there are some basics that I just need to start mastering to be a better team member. That's, yeah, definitely. And in single player video games, I like to not do the story and do other things just to see what happens. I can't do that with a human GM and team members, though. Yeah, and
Mm.
I agree with you that like if that's the type of game you're playing, and I will say this actually, like if that's the type of game that you're playing, where it's like there is sort of like a laid out thing where like there's sort of a general direction the story is meant to go, then yes, I agree with you. However, there is There is a type of game where that kind of like just sort of let's do something and see what happens is totally a viable approach. And I think what it comes down to is really just like I know consent is sort of like a loaded word a lot of the time these days. That not loaded in terms of like it's like controversial, but I mean loaded in terms of like that it often is taken to mean something much heavier than it needs to all the time. Because in this case, I'm talking consent as in like everybody at the table agreeing that that's the kind of game that they want to play. You know, that's sometimes
Yeah.
consent is as simple as that. It's as simple as just like everybody agreeing that like, oh yeah, we don't really want the story heavy. We would like to just sort of make our own story, and like that's cool as long as everybody's on board with that. You know,
Hmm.
and yeah, this is why people talk about session zeros being so important because you establish that in session zeros, like the types of games you want to play.
Yeah, and like sitting down with everyone beforehand to decide what sort of game you want to play is the best way to for everybody to wind up having fun. So that way you don't get 4 sessions in and like 2/3 of your group is like, this is amazing. And then a couple of people are like, mostly.
Yeah, yeah, and like not just session zeros because I think sometimes people think that session zero is like all right we had our session zero and we're good now we just play the game but like checking in after that too,
Hmm.
checking in periodically during the course of like a long-term campaign, having little check-ins being after sessions being like hey how do you guys feel that's going, is there something that you'd want to see more of, do you want to see less of this, or do you want more combat, or do you want fewer puzzles or like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about consent and like aftercare too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like when you're finished playing, just like checking it because it's a group activity, just checking in to make sure that everybody's getting what they want out of the group activity that you're doing together. So
Yeah.
it it's like well, like one of the things I harp on teacher stuff all of the time, but it's just because I was educated for like 5 years on how to do it. So bear with me. But like one of the things they talk about, and I know that everybody hates tests because in American schools they're sort of poorly used and high stakes testing is a nightmare. But one of the things they encourage you to do as a teacher is all kinds of different like assessments that aren't necessarily like big flashy tests. And this is kind of the same thing. Like you're basically like little checks for learning and engagement along the way to ensure that like did my students today take away from what I did or take away from what I taught what I wanted them to take away from it. And it's kind of the same thing here where you're just like, you check in every so often. Maybe it's ever after every session, maybe it's every other week or something, but check in and be like, is everybody still getting what they want out of this game? Is there like you said, is there something more or less that you want to see of that kind of stuff? So just like, keeping an eye on things.
Yeah. Um, going to chat. Spigs makes an excellent point, which is if you stop learning to get better, you're doing wrong. As a player or GM, you should be trying to learn new things every session. I agree. Like whenever anybody has ever asked me what my like number one piece of GMing advice is, I often get the sense that they're asking me um expecting an answer like oh learn the rules and be prepared, take notes and that kind of things. And like sure, I guess that stuff is important, but I wouldn't say it's the end all be all. Frankly, if I could only give somebody one piece of GMing advice, it's to never stop learning and never assume that you have or will ever reach the end of your journey GMing. Because that's how you stagnate and how like you see it all the time in academics, right? In like
Mm-hmm.
higher academics where like somebody will dedicate their whole life and career to learning and specializing in one specific thing, but like the rest of the world doesn't stop learning about those things and learning new stuff about that stuff and about those subjects, and then you end up in a situation where you see yourself as the expert, but there's new information, but you reject it because you're the expert and you don't know that stuff, right? Like that's incredibly toxic. and,
Yeah.
and like no, that's not based on a real actual experience I had with a real professor in real life. Anyway, but
Oh,
but like that's the kind of thing. Like so it's true in anything. because those types of teachers are the worst. Yes, they absolutely are. Which is why I say, if I like my one piece of if I can only give one piece of GMing advice, like imagine, like that's bad enough with a teacher, but imagine somebody who you're at the table with, making yourself vulnerable to, like we've talked about many times, and when we've had conversations about tabletop RPGs and the vulnerability that they kind of require, even if you're not engaging emotionally, right? It still requires a certain amount of vulnerability. Imagine having that personality at the table. Like, anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so that's why my number one piece of GMing advice is never assume you will ever reach the end of your journey learning to GM.
Well,
That's a
and it,
good note for players too.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Because if you think that you've gained all the knowledge and you're the most powerful there is, then you've kind of ruined the game for yourself. So
Yeah.
good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
There's so much out there to learn at any given time. Like
Yeah.
learning something new, I find like learning something new almost always results in my being able to ask myself more questions about it, and that's very exciting to me because I just love learning shit.
Yeah. Well, and
But
like, and I would say the best way of combating that is, especially now with streaming tabletop RPGs and like actual plays and stuff like that. One of the best things that you can do is, if you reach a point where you feel like you're stagnating, or where you think that you have like learned everything there is to know, make it your business to go find somebody else who's doing what you're doing, who you've never seen before, and watch how they do it, because I guarantee you'll learn something. And like, maybe you've learned a lot. Maybe you've learned a lot about how to do this thing, and you've been doing it. You've been GMing for 20 years, 40 years, whatever. But maybe you, because I know this has been the case with me, and I've only been GMing for like 12 years, um, where you'll realize that there were like patterns and strategies that you adopted that now are useless to you, because you adopted them during a time when you were in a particular stage of your development and it worked for you then, but maybe it doesn't now. So like, anyway, yeah.
another toxic habit that I had, and it was toxic mostly just to me, but was that like when I started GMing, I used to write out just like pages and pages and pages of notes for every session. Um, and I think Matthew, I can't remember if it was on or off stream, roasted me for this last week. I think he said something like, "And how many of those did you actually use?" But
Yeah.
and I used a lot of them at first, but then like I assumed when I started running games again after taking a break from doing it that that was how I had to do it,
Hmm.
and that wasn't true. It didn't work for me anymore, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work for me anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I'll get more into that later, I think, because right now I think Freeman still has to answer this question. Did you have an
It's
answer
true.
for?
It's I guess maybe when I look back on my role playing experience, I cannot actually give a proper timeline. So bear with me here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like at one point when I first ever started it, I was kind of like a test. I was testing out a system my friend was creating based on a D&D 5e
Mm-hmm.
5.3 3.5
Yeah.
and some other things. And I feel like it was a one-on-one, so I got all the attention and I got to make the most powerful character ever on purpose to see if the game could be broken. So, and then I went into other versions. I feel like I went from being not very overbearing as a player character, but maybe a little louder than I needed to be
Mm.
because I was kind of just boisterous as a teenager, and then going maybe too far on the opposite side of the spectrum where I didn't really say much at all.
Mm.
And so that can be, I think it was like more toxic. The first one was probably like toxic for other people and for the whole game as a whole. And then the second one, the withdrawing, was toxic for me as a player. So that's where I think there might be other ones. I mean, obviously there probably are other ones. I'm
Right.
just not
Yeah.
thinking of it. I can't think of them right now.
Yeah. Well, those are great examples too, though. Like those two are particular. Like, the first one kind of going along a little bit with like what John was saying for his own,
Hmm.
which was like sort of spotlight stealing, right? Like taking up
mhm.
space, right?
Yeah.
And then the other one was more like, I could see it being a problem for you, the player, but I could also see, like, as a GM, I feed on like my players'
Exactly.
feedback, where it's like not just what they say or in the game, but also like their physical reactions and so, which is
Yeah.
why having Caitlin in a gaming group is amazing. Uh,
True. This is true.
So good. It's so good.
um, but yeah, like I feed on that energy, and like
Yeah.
and I rely on my players' input and reactions to figure out where I'm at, like
Hmm.
how I'm doing. Am I engaging people? And yeah, so yeah, no, those are really good examples.
And going from like the spectrum of feeling like I have to win something.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I have to win, I have to be competitive, which I really don't really like that in the first place. So I don't know why I did it in tabletop games. I feel like I did kind of do that a little bit. And then going from that to actually being more in love with the role playing aspect. I don't have to roll. Good. Let me just get into character for 3 or 4 hours and
What was
just
it
talk.
like?
I don't want.
Last episode of Infinite Horizon, was there like one roll the whole game?
Yeah, yeah. I
I
love
honestly
that so
didn't even
much.
notice until like we were at break, and I was like, wait a minute, did anybody roll yet? And
Did
Four
anyone roll
years
the?
ago, that would have irritated me. I'd been
yeah,
like, "What? I want. Where's my combat? I want combat," because that's where I was at that point,
right,
and I
yeah,
just can't. 4 or 5 years ago, maybe I don't know.
yeah,
It's like, but when you play a barbarian
right, yeah. When you play a barbarian,
in D&D, it's
what is
it's
it? What
four.
is the
So
expression? When your only tool is a hammer, you everything looks like a nail.
yeah,
When
yeah,
your only tool is Great Weapon Master.
Yeah.
right.
I want to go back and address
Hmm.
a few things in chat, but Gemini Lightning says, I love that you're talking about this in reference to like session zero and check ins, because it means you're doing this for Infinite Horizon. And yes, we definitely
Mhm.
do that. In fact, we are specifically talking about doing a check in meet sometime this week. We'll see how that goes. But yes, that is the plan. And we did a session zero going into the second season. So like that was also something that was extremely important to us. But yes, that is the thing that we have been doing. Spig says, "Have you guys tried Roses and Thorns? It's when the GM asked after the session for everyone, including the GM, tells the group one thing they really enjoyed and one thing they really felt could have been done better." No, you know what? Not in any formal sense. I mean, I've done that kind of thing, but not in any formal sense. Just sort of like as a like, hey, what'd you guys think?
Hmm.
What is this kind of what you are looking for? Or yeah, but that's interesting. I do kind of like that. Hmm.
What's it called?
Yeah.
Roses and Thorns is what is
It
what.
Oh, it's a good name.
Hmm.
it
That makes
reminds
yeah.
me. Oh, go ahead. Finish.
No, that's all I had to say. It's a good name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it reminds me a lot of the thing that I remember doing in writing workshops and stuff, which was like praise, question, polish, where like you offer a piece of praise, you ask a question about the writing that you reviewed, and then
Hmm.
you offer like some suggestions for making it better. So it's kind of like the same deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Solid Damage says, I had an interesting encounter with my player because we all agreed this campaign in 5e would have more roleplay and decision making slash intrigue and less just battle to battle. But then after the first no battle session, a lot of comments came back. We didn't fight anything last time. I was frustrated with the idea that most of the skills I take as a player never get used because they are non combat skills, which was my reasoning for making a more intrigue slash decision game. Um, yeah, yeah, that can be rough because like that's the thing, like, and that's why check-ins are so important, right? Because sometimes you'll go in like you'll have consensus, like Karaoke Night said earlier, using the word consensus. You'll have it going in, and I think that that's like, but then things change, right? Like maybe they'll start playing and they go, oh, actually, we really do want like combat and want to do more of that, right? And like that's the thing. So like those kinds of check-ins are extremely important, not just to say if your players are like okay and doing okay at the table, but if they're even just getting what they want. Because I did mention earlier about how like you know in order to avoid a certain degree of toxicity as a player, you have to sort of um, let go a little bit of like the idea of getting specifically what you want out of the game and at and whatever. But that doesn't mean you let go of it entirely. And it a good way of handling that is to then focus more on like what other people want to get out of the game. you know
Hmm.
and I think that's kind of what like my pivot was like. I That's what helped me kind of pivot away from that for myself. I'm sort of getting off of the topic of what you were talking about, Solid, but yeah, like that's an interesting situation, because yeah, I could see that being frustrating.
Hmm.
But yeah, is that a situation that you resolved, or are you still kind of like, or was that a long time ago, or is this recent, or I'm curious to see if you resolved it. I'm curious to see how that happened. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm going through.
Geekouts and Spigs were talking about notes shortly thereafter, and Spigs just said, I run most games with notes on a napkin, and I just was collecting my
Listen,
pile of note cards
Oh yeah.
that I definitely make note. Like I have run.
This is what I use. I
I
use
mean, they're
three and a half, or three by five note cards, 3.5 by
mhm.
whatever the fuck these are. Yeah, the 3 by 5 note cards. This is what I use. Um, and usually, like, if I can't fit what I need for a session on here, then I know it's not going to all fit in the session.
Hey, I like that.
So
I
I feel you.
Something that I still do, and this is, I think, a bleed over is of my tendencies as a player to like kind of focus on like highlight moments that I want, to come along at some point. Um, but I will sometimes like have a notebook where I'll think of a cool piece of dialogue or a moment for an NPC, and I'll write it down just so I don't forget it. And then I'll just have that sitting open next to me while I run the game. And if there's an opportunity to make that happen, then I'll jump on it and I have a very cool like line or
Right.
piece of dialogue to throw in. I'm terrible at keeping all of that in my head. Like in the moment, I will always forget.
Yeah. See, I tend to keep things in my head because I know if I write them down, I won't look at them, as can be evidenced by the fact that all of last game, I had written, before the game started, I had written myself a note that I like specifically went into the other room to get these little sticky notes to write down this note, this very important note on my sticky. I put it on my computer where it was going to be visible to me the whole game, and it was. And I looked at it many times throughout Wednesday's game. But for whatever reason, I did not read what was on the note. I just kept looking at it. And so I forgot to tell everybody on Wednesday that the next day, which is yesterday now, Thursday, is Freeman's birthday. Happy
Damn
birthday,
it.
Freeman.
God damn it.
Happy birthday, dear Freeman.
John, that
Happy
was that
birthday.
both of you guys melted my Lucas. You put that post with the pictures as just saying straight through anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I'm gonna say. And then Jonathan with the happy birthday song.
Mhm.
Oh God,
I'm
I'm getting out of here now.
I'm always like I'm always so happy when people enjoy the little birthday songs because it always feels like such a simple thing for me to do. But
Yeah. Anyway, that was my segue back into that. What I was actually getting at was that like basically any of you who have watched me GMing or have been in any games where I've GM'd stuff, like none of those things are written down ever. Not like only if it's like a very heavily like I need to keep track of the things that I want to have happen in this session so that I don't forget important stuff. But absolutely everything else, yes.
season one of Infinite Horizon, the Saboteur arc.
Yeah, that was one where I had to write stuff down, but I only wrote down like specific events so that I made sure I knew. But like absolutely everything else is I keep it in my head because if I don't, it's out of brain. It's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Spigs, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for chatting with us. It's good to see you always.
Talk to you
Have
later,
a good
Specs.
night.
Um, yeah, but no, like that's yeah. Notes are for suckers. I'm just kidding. Take notes if they help you. If they don't help you, do know that there are other ways.
Yes.
If notes are not helpful, like don't feel bad about yourself if you are bad at note taking or writing stuff down for yourself because there are other ways of GMing. You don't have to maybe projecting a little bit, because I definitely was like down on myself for a couple of years when I was like, I don't write notes anymore. I don't plan my sessions, and that means I'm a bad GM. It doesn't mean that at all. Uh,
Nope.
Like you
As
could get like
long
a Bluetooth speaker and just like have like a thing, just a
there you go.
recording of all
Yeah,
your
like
notes
have somebody
fed to
have.
you,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Yep.
and just pause it when you're at this point where, okay, I got it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Hold on, I have to listen to. Oh yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
where
you can
we're
get
at.
one of those like Bluetooth headphones, like a
Mhm.
flesh colored one, so it's like
Right.
stealthy.
Yeah.
It could be
Yeah.
like totally
Yeah. I
007 the
honestly, and
whole
then
game.
like you just wear a nice like fitted suit,
Oh
black
yeah.
suit to the game, and wear some sunglasses, and then make sure that at least one of your players is called Mr. Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
Oh goodness me.
Um, or alternatively, if you're not going for that reference, you could alternatively at some point during the game ensure that you like go like this and go, "We've been made," and then
Yeah.
that's it. That's like the whole thing. Um,
We've
Perfect.
been made. When the players figure out your plot twist, you're just like, we've been made.
abort mission. We've been made.
That'd be fun.
Solid Damagen says we have resolved it by having a candid conversation among us all, and I explained what I was thinking for the campaign, and it just naturally worked itself out where people are getting combat that is easy to understand and follow, while at other times hours of talking and puzzle solving.
Hmm.
The disconnect was in the phrase role-playing focus. Most players were thinking role-playing combat and tactics, but not role-playing history, social puzzles, and persuasion. Got it. Yeah. So I guess so. Then, like, your issue was more like one of like of different misunderstanding of like terminology that you each were using. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that playing out. Because that's the thing. That's an interesting thing, right? Because that so many of the terminologies that we use in tabletop RPGs have are such that they have different meanings for different people. Such as if you go like the easiest place to see this is if you go on like forums that are for people who are new to tabletop RPGs, looking for help and whatever, you will often see a lot of discussion of metagaming and railroading. And these are words that are used so often in so many, like to describe so many things that they tend to lose meaning or the meaning becomes diffused. And yeah, it's,
Just you bringing up those two words and online forums for new players has physically exhausted
I'm so
me.
sorry. Look,
I used to be
sometimes they're helpful. Sometimes they're helpful, but like I've seen a lot of really good advice being given out in some of those. But like so often you also see people totally misunderstanding and misusing the terms metagaming and what was the other one I said? Railroading.
railroading.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to be subbed to I think DM Academy
Mhm.
and I think it might have been D&D on Reddit,
Mhm.
and I would see all kinds of
Yeah.
those posts.
Yeah. But and like I said, it's particular. Well, I don't know how it is now, but at the time, DM Academy was a very like there's lots of good, useful advice in there, and people giving good, useful advice. But every once in a while, you'd run across posts where like new DMs were talking about railroading and metagaming, and I was like, and I'm like, that's not what metagaming is, dude. Like you got it, like because at a certain point, you as a player, in order to be able to play the game, have to acknowledge the game. Like if
Yeah.
you are the designated healer of the party, you need to be able to talk about hit points. You need to be able to know how bad people are looking and whether or not you're because otherwise you are like you are unable to play the game effectively. So anyway,
If I were to measure my vitality on a scale of 1 to 93, I would say I'm at about a 32.
don't you guys Olivia says, don't you guys know it's metagaming if you think at all? Correct. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
yeah.
that's why actually I was
Oh,
talking about this at the beginning about how I play tabletop RPGs characters that are idiots now, and that's just to avoid metagaming. I sit down at the table and head empty for the whole
Mhm.
session.
Yep. That's correct. That's why the natural trajectory is like super competent like power fantasy characters and himbos. That's why that's the trajectory, right? Like, because
Yes.
you just got to head empty, or else you're
Yeah.
metagaming.
Like you just flush it all out at the beginning of the session so that you can't cheat, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Sorry, Geek Out's just roasting me again for Yar the Pirate.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. Oh God. Uh,
Head empty.
oh, I seem to have missed Olivia roasting me earlier, which is the first 5 minutes of pre-Infinite Horizon is always Lucas and I talking about how we have no notes. I would like to say that this is a joke. I would like to say that that's a joke. But Olivia is being dead serious about that.
I remember when some of us would have notes for Ramblemancy.
Oh, I remember that day.
Yes. I think it was.
It was quite
just
literally one day. The first one.
Sometimes I do make notes for Ramblemancy, but usually it's for ones that we're doing that are like more like academic is the wrong word,
Yeah.
but like ones where I definitely like have a few points.
Yeah, like I'll write stuff down if I want to remember it for Ramblemancy, where I'm like, ooh, this is a fun thing that I want to talk about.
A good question.
But I will also say I do write it down. I do not look at it. Because usually I will remember or I just won't. And so,
Yeah. There was like Ejafit makes a good point, until we derail you and we just go tumbling ass over heels into butt puns for 30 minutes and then what do you do?
I do have like one sentence and like one name of one planet. One name
Which
and one
planet? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, I'm curious too. Because it's funny because John can tell you, like I was in a campaign with him for a long time for like, was it not quite a year? It wasn't quite a year that we were playing that game.
Is it the 3.5?
No. I'm talking about like the most recent one that you were running.
Oh yeah. The home game that I was running.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
Not quite a year, but in that entire time, I made it through like 2/3 of a page of note taking,
which is hilarious because Verdiman, who occasionally pops into chat, was also in that game, and that man is the most.
According to chat, it says he's here right now, but I don't know how true that is. But
all right, I don't know if you're there, Steve, but thank you for writing the better part of a literal novel for notes for our game.
That was.
I've heard this.
It's more than 100 pages.
Yeah,
it's more than 100 pages.
It's wild.
I've heard of this legend.
Yeah, this is the same guy who is in this game that just did a piece of world building for me and like wrote the Silmarillion of his character and like wrote into existence an entire tribe of Aasimar and all of their names and like all of their like parentage and the history and lore and stories of their. Yeah, it's amazing.
Okay.
Oh my God. Sorry, I'm laughing because Olivia says Geoterra because it was session 0 and I had hope in notes then. So great, yeah, excellent.
Goodness.
Laios Van Hoon, hello, welcome.
Hey.
TTRPG stands for tabletop role-playing game. Games like Dungeons and Dragons or I'm trying to think, Pathfinder is another like example of a very like common big name one.
You could put GURPS on that list too, but you shouldn't.
You should just.
You should probably.
Yeah. No,
Probably.
don't feel bad. There's so many people who like are veterans in TTRPGs who like have never heard that particular abbreviation, so like don't feel bad at all.
Yeah, you are one of today's lucky 10,000.
Yeah.
To put it in XKCD terms.
But welcome. Thanks for being here.
Good to have you.
We sort of. I'm trying to remember. Did we put to bed that the question about toxic trade? I think we did. We moved.
I think I was the last of
the
3 of us. Yeah. But if there were any in chat, I don't know if there were more in chat. But I think we did.
English abbreviation can be anything from Taco Bell to Taylor. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, very true.
That's very true.
As a native English speaker and somebody who writes for a living, yeah, no, English is fucked.
Yeah. It's definitely yeah. Yeah, you were 100% correct. Yeah. What was I gonna say? I was gonna transition us to like
Mm.
another question, but I already forgot what it was. So,
Oh,
oh
Oh,
no, I didn't forget. It's the opposite of the previous question, which is which is, how do you pronounce every vowel different? It makes no sense. Like
sometimes
as
we
somebody
pronounce.
who studied English in college, I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. I like I truly never found the answer to that. So, except for the fact that English is several different languages just stacked on top of each other, wearing a trench coat. So,
mm-hmm,
that's
mm-hmm.
the best answer that I can give you for that.
The Isle of Britain was conquered so many times by so many different people
Yeah.
that like
Um,
nobody knew what to speak after a couple centuries.
and if I can, for like just a hot second, get on my linguistics nerd thing, soapbox, I will say if you look at if Amethyst and I were on the same, yeah, cool. If you look at Middle English, it's very obvious there because you've got very clearly Germanic influences, very clear like French and that kind of stuff, and then you've got some like Norwegian pronunciations and like weird stuff in there, and then interspersed with the random Latin word that's just thrown in for no reason. It's not even subtle. It's literally like they took a handful of one language, a handful of another language, and just smashed them together over the head of a different language. It's anyway.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the English major required linguistics class. I avoided it actually, but I'm just a nerd. So, um,
I had to take it.
mhm.
One of my favorite T-shirts actually is from the linguistics department, and it has a very stupid linguistics joke on the back.
um, anyway, back to my question, which was, what is a thing that this is? I know this one's gonna be harder for everybody because it requires people to be nice to themselves.
Oh well then.
What is a thing that you know that you do well as a role player at the table? Like that is a good positive trait that you would want, a desirable trait that you would want to have at a table.
Well, um, I don't always hit this beat quite right, but having kind of just being a little lighter on my feet so that I can like kind of go in any either direction, kind of exercise more of that improv that I love it so much, but it actually is kind of it's a bit of a task, not a task. It can be hard. It has to be natural, come off naturally. And I feel like when I'm having a good a good day, then I'm improvising pretty well in the moment. I'm I'm a little quicker on my feet, and I think probably more easily what comes more easily is probably just being a good listener
Mm, yeah.
at the table and not always just kind of diving in at something. It can sometimes bite you back a little bit, but in any case, I think being like listening to everyone around the table before jumping into something
Yeah.
is a something I appreciate. I think I do
Active
okay.
listening.
Yes, active listening, and you
Yep.
guys know me. You know that I'm a very active listener.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So
Yeah. Olivia says Freeman has the best one-liners.
truly,
thank you, thank you so
truly.
much.
Yeah.
Those are that's like when I'm having a
Mm-hmm.
good moment is what I mean. You know that comes off real quick, and I'm like, I don't even believe it came out of my mouth. You know that's how.
Do you hear a whining noise? Yeah, it's you. Let's go.
Hands
Dead.
down, one of the best lines.
That was a good Mason. That's what I'm talking about. That's an example of exactly what I'm talking about. That
Yeah.
moment.
If
Yeah.
active listening was banned, it would be a true Warhammer Chaos campaign. 100%. Yeah.
I
Yes,
agree.
absolutely. Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh,
John?
um, I think I think one of the things that it didn't used to be a thing that I think I was very good at, but I think it is something especially now that I feel like I do a lot as a player, and I feel like making I feel like I'm pretty good at making the interesting choice. Like just I tend to just do a lot as a player these days. Um, so that and I try to do that in such a way that it makes interesting opportunities for other players at the table or for the GM.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So I'm always sort of on the I'm not necessarily like always on the lookout for the most weird thing to do, but I try to just just do, and I think that is a generally positive trait of mine as a player.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. I feel like John will take that as a compliment.
Is it taken wrong if I say John sounds like a history lecturer in a good way, but 20 years too young? Sorry, I'm new. I was you wouldn't know this being new, but I was a teacher. I was a education minor in college, so I definitely I've definitely cultivated that skill. I was an English major and an education minor, so like I never stood a chance. Peace was never an option.
Yeah, back in the earlier days of John's appearances on Ramblemancy, I remember I had to specifically tell John to turn off his teacher voice when we were done when we were on stream.
Very
So
true.
yeah, so you're not wrong. You are absolutely not wrong about that.
And
Um,
we had to like turn off our
oh my
we had
god.
to turn some things off as well in the very beginning
Yeah.
too. So
One of my
it's a thing.
favorite stories about early Ramblemancy is after like 2 or 3 episodes where like during one of our meetings I was like, guys, we have to be less professional.
We gotta tone down
We
that.
have to be less professional.
We need to be laid back
Yeah, that's
and like.
um yeah. Ah, gosh, I feel like, see, I asked this question without having like thought ahead of time for an answer for myself. So in order to think about it, I'm gonna go to chat because I saw a few things there. Um, Karaoke Unite says, "This is tough. I don't think I have an answer yet, but I do keep an immaculate inventory in all my games, if that counts." That's excellent, and I will say as a GM, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you and players like you. Not because I'm gonna make you like keep care, because generally I will not care, but that's precisely why I'm glad you do, because I won't care about how like immaculately you keep your inventory. So when you do, when you can like, when you as a player can look and be like, oh, I have this thing that I found 30 sessions ago, I'm going to use it now. As a GM, I love that. Because
I will
I
say
forgot you had it. So
I will say karaoke night, as somebody who has GM'd for you, you are one of the most creative players that I have had the pleasure of GMing
mhm.
for. So that is definitely, I think, one of your like most positive traits as a player.
Yeah. Solid damage. I can confirm. Solid damage says I keep 1 to 2 I create 1 to 2 social ticks and stick to those throughout the campaign. Things like I talk fast when the subject of dragon comes up, like I just want to get it over with. Ooh,
Hmm,
social ticks are good. I love
yeah.
that. See, I'm very inconsistent when it comes to creating those things. Like I'll do them and create them, but then I'll forget about them. And so like that's really cool that you can do that. That's an awesome skill. Age of Fit says, as I've said, I've only played one session with one other player who is also a first time player, but I feel like I was quite good at supporting and yes anding her ideas. Also very good. Being a supporting, or being, let me try that again. Being a support player doesn't necessarily just mean having prepared support spells. It also means
Hmm.
supporting your fellow players, which is
Hmm.
great. Yes and is a good skill. I agree. Um, Olivia says, I think I can bring an emotional intensity to sessions sometimes. The role playing is my favorite part, and sometimes smashing. Love to find and build drama. Yes, I think I agree. You are very good at that. Uh,
Agreed.
some of the most, like, emotionally, not necessarily the most, like, tearful, emotional, whatever, but, like, the most emotionally intense moments in Infinite
Hmm.
Horizon have been purely because Olivia was part of the scene. So,
I
yeah.
definitely got goosebumps last week. I'll say that much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Uh, if we haven't all laughed and cried by the end of a session, what's the point? You know what? That's kind
Uh,
of my philosophy when it comes to jamming as well.
I was gonna say,
Um,
yes, the Steven Universe approach to GMing or
you
to
know
playing
what?
tabletop RPGs.
Actually, with that, I think I do have an answer to that,
Hmm.
which is something that, like, I'm sure I would have different answers as well, but like, especially coming hot off the heels of this week's Infinite Horizon, no spoilers, I promise. Um, I will say that one thing that I know that I am that I am good at is that I have gotten good at over the years is creating um creating NPCs that like people care about, players care about, and who almost come to life on their own. Those are things that I think that I am good at, and that's more as a GM. But um, I'm using that as my cheating answer because, in fairness, I have spent more time as a GM than as a player. But um, so, but I don't know. Hmm. As a player, I would have to say probably. I mean, yes, ending absolutely, but also, I may have to think about that one some more.
Yeah, I will definitely speak. Like, I definitely love about playing in games or watching games that you run, the NPCs that you create. And I know that's something that you like have worked very hard to do, because like I've known you for a while, but it's definitely like it's definitely the highlight of a lot of games that I run, like that I play in with you, like getting to interact with some of those NPC characters.
Yeah. Um, Lucas is so good at NPCs. Like, what the fuck? Who gave him the right?
Who I like
I gave me
Drusilla.
this power, and no one can stop me.
Like Drusilla is still such a prominent
Oh.
like
Mhm.
figure in my mind.
Mhm.
Baby.
Yeah.
Yep.
I looked at the art that I did of Drew earlier today when I was sifting through my hard drive.
Yeah.
Miss that kid.
Um, I have found Solid Dimension says I have found I listen better as a DM than as a player, so I'd rather be a DM. Yeah, that's interesting. That's
Hmm.
really interesting to me because I actually
Hmm.
yeah, that's something I'd never really thought about before, but I think you might be right. I definitely listen better as a GM than I do as a player. Huh.
That's
Yeah.
true because as a player you can sometimes allow yourself to tune out for a moment, but if you're a GM, I imagine you're on it
Yeah.
for the most part. I don't know. I'm speaking from a place where I'm just a player,
Well, yes
so
and
I don't
no.
know.
I think as the GM, I feel more freedom to be like, okay, sorry, I did. Could you repeat that? Right? Like
Yeah,
I
that's
feel more
true.
freedom to do that as a GM than I do
That's
as a player.
right. Huh.
I
Good
don't know
point.
why. It's not like I don't have that freedom or don't feel like I do as a player. It's just, you know.
Huh.
Oh, good night, Olivia. Thanks for being here. Thanks for
Good
chatting with us.
night.
Um,
Sweet dreams.
actually, don't don't do it, John. You're gonna get it stuck in my head. Um, so I think I do know one that I have. I'm definitely better at role playing because Solid said earlier about like the ticks and stuff like that, and I definitely am better at that when I'm a player. I'll
Hmm.
say that when I'm a player, I'm very good at. Here's what I have an answer. As a player, I am good at taking those spotlight moments. See, I am naturally a very talkative player. I tend to be like the alpha player, not the alpha player, but like the one who like I thanks to ADHD, I will
Instigator.
I will yes, an instigator, but that's not really what I was going for. More just that like I tend to talk a lot. Thankfully only Lucas haunts me in game. Yeah, that's true. No, like I tend to be like somebody who talks a lot uh in game, and one of the things that I've so in learning that like what you were talking about John earlier about like learning to not be the spotlight hog, it's hard for me because ADHD and stuff like that, right? Because sometimes you just want to blurt out the thing that came to your mind. You're like, I know what to say in this instance, and you just like say it. But one of the things that I have learned to do, it's not exactly a solution, but it is a way that makes it a little bit better, is when I do that, I also bring other people into it with me. So
Mm-hmm.
like it's not so much it's not quite the same as like making room for other people at the table, but like specifically opening the door and shoving them through it with me. It's more like that. So that's one thing that I say that I am good at as a player.
Yeah, I've definitely watched you do that in the in the game that we were running the last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like before. So, and I think that's a really good tendency in general as a player, is to just be like, especially if you've noticed that somebody like has a good door or like, you know, opportunity to jump into a scene or something like that. You can just be like, come with me.
Yeah. Yeah. um.
Get in, loser. We're role playing.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I love that.
Um. Yeah. If we aren't moving forward, then we're moving backward, sort of attitude. Yeah, that's definitely a common thing that I see. Um. And like,
Hmm.
we're sort of moving towards the end, but this is sort of a related question, which
Mhm.
is, what's something that somebody else has done that has made it easier for you to participate in a game, or more enjoyable?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And that could be
Um,
GM, fellow players.
Hmm.
Yeah, could be somebody who wasn't even in your game that made you think of something like that you'd never thought of before that made it easier.
Hmm.
the game. Are you talking about the game that John made that brought me to this channel and then it was over? Actually, this is a different game.
Mm-hmm.
It was set in the same world as the Dreamwell Chronicles. I was running two games concurrently in the same setting, and those two parties did actually intersect. I didn't put them all in the same Zoom call because that would have been close to like 12 people, I think, in one game, and that would have been utter chaos. If we were playing them in person, it would have been doable,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I think that's it. That's a good question, and I do have to sort of think about it
Hmm.
for uh, for a moment.
Yeah. Age of Fit says, honestly, murder hoboing. Really, that made it easier for you? Or that's incredible. I love that.
Huh.
I'd be interested to hear what that, like, how that went.
I think as a GM, I love it when my players just pitch me the wildest shit.
You're welcome.
It makes it say what?
I said, you're welcome.
Putting you and Caitlin together at a table for a brief period that I was running a game for was the best decision I ever made. Um, just because like I feel like I am such a yes GM. I love yes ending my players. I love doing it. And so anytime that I just love it when I am pitched curveballs because I just watch the ball go past and then go, that was really cool. Let's run with that.
That was really cool. Let's go get it. And
Yeah. So I think that's my answer. I don't know if Geekouts is referring to my GMing style being pure chaos or something else in chat being
I
pure
think he was
chaos.
referring to me and Caitlin being at the same game, the same table.
Truly. And then there was the call that I made that I allowed them to stack guidance, which was a choice.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Age of Fit says it's easier to play unhinged when you're with an aggressive murder hobo. Fair enough. Okay, I get it. I understand what.
Hmm.
Yeah. Freeman, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm sure I could answer this like in many ways. I don't know why it's not coming to me now, but I will say that oh, man. Well, one example I guess would be being able to play a barbarian at first, because when it's a new system that you're not familiar with, uh, and maybe you're not completely familiar with the material, it's kind of nice to just play the basic, sword and sandal type character with
Mm-hmm.
with a maybe not super, not like lower intelligence. That way, I can say things that are a little silly because I might not because the character is just not as intelligent as the rest.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was a good way to ease into
Yeah.
certain games, is just playing a fighter. But
Yeah.
yeah, I still don't even feel very satisfied with that answer. I feel like there's another answer that I'm still grasping for.
Mm-hmm. Oh, solid Demodron. The question was what is something that somebody else has done, whether that's another player, your GM, somebody who wasn't even in your game, who might have said something that gave you new insights, that made it easier to play in a game or to run or whatever, something like that. That was
That's why I don't feel satisfied with my answer. It didn't really answer the question. Hmm.
um I'll let you think about it for a second because
Yeah.
there is another question in chat, which is, can you play a successful trader in D&D? I imagine you probably could,
Wait.
but a campaign. Yeah, I think yes, I agree with Solid Damagern's answer, which I think the campaign slash DM must support your desire to do that, but also it might be hard in D&D because so much of D&D's mechanics and rules are centered around combat, and so much
Mhm.
of what all of the characters and classes can do would be combat related. But actually, to your point about being the guy to buff the others, that's what a bard or a support caster is. So you could totally role play like and have like the trader part of the backstory be like the flavor of it, but then have all these like support type spells who just sort of support people and like yeah, like those kinds of things. So you could do that kind of stuff. It's possible. I think my personal opinion, and take this for exactly that, it is just my opinion, is that if you want to play a trader, I think there might be better systems than D&D to do that in. So
For
that's
sure.
that's what. Oh, Artificer is also a good call. Yeah.
Forge Cleric, also a pretty
Mm,
good, like a pretty good support class in
true.
terms of like it's very items focused. You can create things with your channel divinity, and then like at the beginning of the day, you can like give +1s to stuff. So
Yeah.
that's another a good way to do it in D&D in particular. But yeah, I agree with Lucas, and I think Matthew mentioned it last week. There's probably a game out there that allows you to do just that,
Mm-hmm.
that somebody has made. It's the beauty of this of the age of tabletop RPGs that we live in right now.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There's so many
Yeah.
people making stuff.
Yeah. And yeah, Leos, I think that is the best answer. And yeah, like you can still fire your crappy pistol, but you're not the hero in battle. Yep. I think that's my answer to that question. I think is that you can, but you'd have to be very kind of you'd have to like be working with the GM to like get that to work. You would have to pick specific. You'd be limited to probably some specific builds and classes, and but chances are you might want to be if that's a if you're not married to the idea of playing D&D and you're more interested in playing that specific character type, there might be a different game that is better at facilitating that kind of play. So that's my answer to you. Yes, you can do it. It might be tough, but it's possible. But might be better to use a different game for that. Um,
Troika comes to mind actually. If
hmm,
you like, if you want fantasy but don't want all of the crunch of D&D.
yeah. Freeman, did you think of something? Yeah.
It's like right there.
Mm-hmm. Solid Damage says had a great player as a pacifist life cleric, and I think everyone just got frustrated with the idea that the fights were made for five level X players, but only four were fighting. Oh, interesting. Hmm. Huh. That's really interesting.
Hmm.
How did that go? How did that go over? I mean, after that. Um, my hmm. I feel like for me, um, the best, or actually the most complete answer that I could give to this is that watching like specifically the stream punks doing like playing their game, watching the way that they supported each other and that they the whole game to each one of them, not just the GM, not just to a single or a couple of players, but to each one of them, the game was a way of appreciating each other, their fellow players, and they took that opportunity and used it as such. So seeing that for me was it was sort of a I don't want to call it a revelation, but it made me think about the way that I was running my games a little differently. It also made me it also was sort of the push that I needed to like you have lots of examples of good GMing, of really good GMing, but you also in this instance there was an example of being good players as well, and that I think is something that often gets overlooked. So for me, that that's in part my answer. It helped me be a better player, watching
Mm-hmm.
other people be better supportive players, and yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, as with so many other things, like one of the best ways to get better at writing is to read other people who are better than you at writing, and one of the best ways to get drawing is to draw from reference. Like
mm-hmm,
look at what other successful artists do, and then decide what you like that they do that you want to take away from that. And the same thing goes for role playing. To kind of dovetail us back into personal growth, it's all about like finding sources, like finding things that you appreciate or that you like that other people do, and then kind of taking little pieces of that and making it your own.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Solid Dimension says it became a meme that the character does nothing until we eventually completed the game. We all still play together and it didn't break the players, just sort of broke the campaign. Gotcha. Okay. Um, and I feel really bad. It sounds like I mock you guys, but I appreciate the advice. No, not at all. I
No,
mean,
no,
like,
no, no.
yeah, no, I get it. Uh, what about Critical Role? Yeah, I mean, like, Critical Role is a good example of some of this stuff, and I will say that my GMing skills reached a whole new level when I discovered Critical Role and started, watching watching Matthew Mercer and started to learn, like, take parts of what I liked of what he did and applied them to my own games. So yeah, absolutely, I would say that he's that as well. But I also feel like I picked up a lot of bad habits from watching Critical Role, which is kind of why my first go to is the Streampunks, because I feel like I've only learned good things from them. So yeah, that's
Yeah. And actually, to their follow-up question, how do you go from being a player to a GM? The best way, I think, the best way that I would begin to answer this is that the GM's a player too.
mm-hmm.
um, the GM's playing the game too. They're just playing the game a little bit differently. So I think some people do start doing it that way. Like Lucas, I think you started GMing, didn't you, instead of
Kind of. I
playing?
mean, like I never had I played in games for a little bit, but not for any long term anything, just sort of in little one shots here and there. And then I immediately was like, okay, I'm not really getting what I want out of these games, what I would want to get out of them. So I'm gonna run it the way that I would want it to be run for me, and then basically just GM from then on. So yeah.
Yeah. And the cool thing about some game systems too, Lios, is that they don't have to. The GM doesn't necessarily have to be solely responsible for the story. I think that's something that a lot of people who were introduced to TTRPGs via D&D, and Critical Role especially, did not to. Not, I'm throwing shade at Critical Role. It's a good show.
Mm-hmm.
But like they expect that the GM is like the holder of all of the story, and they kind of just like give that out to the players. There are a lot of D&D can be that way, it cannot be that way, but there are a ton of systems that allow equal input from players and GM in terms of shaping the story.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Solid Dimension says, I feel like I'm the only person in the world that doesn't really like actual play podcasts. That's you're definitely not, because I know for a fact that is it is it Spigs who was here earlier, or is it Dean? I think it's Dean from Cypher Unlimited, who is
Mhm.
not a big fan of them also. So like, and I
Yeah.
can understand why that would be why like some people don't like them. So I I feel you on that. I find them useful and entertaining. Um But yeah.
I always I love them so much, but they're so long.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing, the only downside
Yeah.
to actual plays for me.
Um. So yeah. Um. That's like can like the concept of GMing versus being like a player in a game. It can and has occupied an entire episode of Ramblemancy. Um, we probably could revisit that at some point soon, but yeah. Except
You're never gonna let me off the hook for this one, are you, Solid Dameron? Love you. I'll
no,
run some.
it's not a bad thing asking questions. I like honestly, it's like I'm glad that you do. This show is all about
Yep.
having that like that back and forth interaction. So like
Yeah.
I'm glad you're asking questions. It's just we're running against the end of our stream time here. So and like I'm fighting with like our time and my desire to give you good, useful, and complete answers.
We do have a Discord server.
That's true.
That is a great place to keep asking tabletop RPG questions. We can put the
The
link in chat.
To answer your question, like the time zone for our streams is generally all of our times are in Pacific time. So yeah, because that's kind of where most of us are centered. So yeah, so but yeah, feel free to join the Discord, and if you've got questions, plenty of us can answer those questions. We've got lots of longtime GMs in there that can answer questions as well. So like, feel free. It's a good spot to do that. And actually, I feel like this is a good segue into the end here. So
Speaking of our Discord,
yeah. So, but really though, speaking of our Discord, you can
please like, comment, and subscribe.
Yeah, you can join our Discord and come and hang out. And if you are subscribed here on Twitch, Discord is a place where you can actually get access to some of our lower tier Patreon rewards. So yeah, we
Subscribe.
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 We have yeah, we have a Patreon where we have several tiers, but the lowest tiers in our Patreon Twitch subscribers get access to that stuff too. So yeah, that's a place where you can do that. As I said at the top of the stream, Infinite Horizon, our sci-fi / supers game run in the Cypher system, the latest episode is on YouTube, and you can watch it now. But shouldn't if you haven't seen previous one. I mean, you can if you want to. It's fine. You just might not understand a lot of what's going on. But for that, we actually do have a season 1 recap that is about 15 minutes of a recap of the first season of our show, and you can watch that and get caught up with everything that you need to know for season 2, of which there are currently 3 episodes. The podcast for that will go up on Sunday, so you can catch it basically everywhere. I've given up trying to list the specific places where you can find it because I will never remember them, and there's a lot of them.
Spotify is the one I know.
Spotify, yeah, and Apple.
We finally did get Apple, right?
We finally did, yeah. iTunes, that's the one I was looking at. Yeah.
iTunes, yeah.
Good.
iMusic, whatever the fuck it is now.
Something like that.
Yeah, that one. It turns
was
out
the
that we
last
had
one.
actually. Do you remember how that worked? It turns out we had actually been there for like a month, but didn't know because they never informed
yeah,
us.
True. They were like, man.
But
Yeah.
yeah. And then of course our next uptime, our next stream will be on Wednesday for Infinite Horizon, the next episode, the 4th episode in our 2nd season. That will be at 6 p.m. Pacific time on Wednesday, right here. And I will remind everybody that twice now, this is the 3rd time, we have announced that there will be an announcement on that day. So That is definitely a thing to be looking at on the lookout for. And if you're not there for the announcement, that's fine because we will probably the following day be announcing it everywhere else. So, yeah, keep an eye out on socials.
Mhm.
I think that's pretty much everything. Yeah,
I think
I
so.
think so.
I think we've covered it all. We've covered it all.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
hmm I saw what was the question? I missed it.
Uh, the question was, I think if your hunting ground was half jungle, half steppe, would you rather be a panther or a cheetah?
I see.
half step.
Yeah, like steps, like I forget. How do you describe? How would you describe steps? Like just sort of grassy hill land.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's more or less what you like African steppes is
hmm
what mine says.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
lowly planted lands. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know what?
Hmm.
That's a very good question. I don't know that I have an answer for you.
What are the two
Was it
creatures?
cheetah or panther? Yeah, cheetah or
Hmm.
panther.
Well, let's see. Both pretty fast. One's actually really a lot faster than the other. I
Yeah,
think
cheetah's fastest
cheetahs
land
are the
animal, I
ones
think.
I think they can clock in at almost 70 miles per hour,
I honestly don't know.
maybe
I
65
just know
miles
that
per
they're
hour.
like one of, if not the fastest land animal.
Yeah, I think I did watch a documentary about a
Geeko
specific
says, "Can
cheetah.
I change mine to bear?" Yes, bear. You know,
I did actually manage to make a butt poem for Amethyst Cat Lady in like 60 seconds.
go for it.
Okay.
Just do
Hey, that
it.
Tonight we made lots of friends and talked ourselves right round the bend. We managed so well to stay out of that hell of punning about our rear ends.
Okay, well, on
wow.
that, we're gonna go. Uh,
Wow.
it is the end of the stream, and somehow, you know what? I will give us this credit that in the trajectory of like derailing, there was half an hour left of the stream where just the rest of it was just derailed into like
Yeah.
butt puns and whatever. And then the next time that it happened, it was like there were only like 15 minutes left, and now we're here at the very end. So
I just
you
had to
know what? We're
squeeze
getting
over the
better.
finish line.
We're getting better. Yeah. All right. Thank
Oh,
you everybody for
goodness me.
coming, hanging out, chatting with us, sharing your experiences and your thoughts. Um, we something that we haven't done in a while. Is there anybody to raid right now?
Oh,
I'm gonna look real
Vanna
quick.
is rating.
If I don't see anybody that I like immediately, I'm like yes. Then we're just gonna. Um.
Yeah, Vanna's on. That's the one that I see on my list
Yeah. Oops.
of followed people. Oh, Rule of Lore streaming. We should rate
Oh,
them.
cool. Yeah, let's go raid them.
Let's do that.
It'll
Yeah,
be the
let's do it.
stream that never ends.
Yeah.
This is the stream that never.
All right. I think we're just going to go. So, thanks everybody for coming by, for hanging out with us. Hopefully, we'll see you on Wednesday for Infinite Horizon. But if not, we'll see you the next time you decide to come roll with us. Good night and good zone, everybody.